Welcome back to our video diary of building our business as big as it can go. So we're calling it Path to Harvest because that's the journey we're on. We've had quite a busy and crazy, mind-blowing last couple of weeks, and I'm calling this that we're coming up for air for a moment to reflect on what those things were and the rocks that we moved, the different things that we encountered, challenges, and we have all of those things happening in any given week. So the agenda for what we're going to do from now on is a quick check-in with how we're feeling and just capturing those emotions in the moment, any headlines and highlights of stuff that we did, and then lessons learned so that hopefully people watching will be able to glean something from our experiences. So let's start with you, Steve. Thoughts and feelings, check in with you. How are you doing this week since the last time we recorded?
A mix of feelings, probably going to be similar every week, but right now I am just kind of anxious to get a few things wrapped up that we've been working on. Feeling, although there's a lot, just it's also exciting. Kind of knowing, where we've come from, what we've gone through, where we're at right now, and that the future. Though there's a lot of work to do right now, the future is pretty amazing, and we're not there yet, but we will be. You know what? I'm thankful that we have advisors. I'm thankful that we have people who know a lot more than us about business, about building teams, cultures, finances, funding, like all the details of running and operating a business successfully. That's super helpful to have. I'm glad we have advisors. I definitely would not want to be doing what we're doing without them.
Yeah, I've had a lot of moments of chaos, that feeling of chaos in the last last couple of weeks since we recorded, which I feel like at this stage of my life, it's like we're almost used to it. There's chaos coming from all different angles. On the macro level, there's chaos in the world. I mean, that never really stops, but it's more chaotic than it ever has been, it seems. And then there's chaos, in the micro sense, and just our family, or just having a lot of kids, a lot of activities, a lot of needs to fulfill and meet. And then on, the nano level, just, and I would say in that micro level in the business as well, because we're small business. And then the nano level, just on a personal internal side. So there's, these different perspectives, but, I definitely go between, I have moments of, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm on the top of the world, to some real, like, not low moments, but just, feeling like things are spinning out of control, or there's too many things to do, not enough hours in the day. And I can talk about this a little more, but it's, as people know, and as you know, I'm very much in the weeds of the business on a day-to-day basis. Like, I am the only one in product development. I'm the only photographer at the moment. I'm the one leading a lot to a big degree the culture of our team in terms of setting that vision and like what I want it to be like, and just guiding some key team players. And so you are as well in different areas, but I'm very much in the weeds of it, and like in the ideation and in future, looking forward into the future collections, future products, the brand itself. How can we make this the most valuable, incredible brand that ever existed in this industry? So I'm very much in the weeds of it all. So that can feel a little chaotic when there's a lot of moving parts in this business that we have, like everything from all the supply chains to the internal managing staff, and like bringing the best out of people, and just all those things. So it's been chaotic, and I am right now in a perpetual state of um, just like, what's the next thing I got to do? And then, kind of taking a breath of air and then like going back underwater for the next year, it feels like. So yeah, it's a lot at the moment. It's also really exciting. So I think that that's the part. If people wonder, like, why aren't you all like burnt out? It's because it's really exciting and it's kind of addictive how exciting it is. And so just seeing the potential that we have and that we're so close to a really massive breakthrough. And I think we're going to go, if we went from 1 to 10 in the last 2 years, which we're not even 2 years old yet, we're about to go to 1 to 1,000 or 100,000 in a very short amount of time here on out as we lay the foundation for stuff. So it's very exciting. I don't sleep great these days. And I think my brain is so active. My brain is active at night. It's processing, it's ideating, it's mostly processing, I feel like. So that's me right now. State of, excited chaos. And then I'll have a day though, somewhere in between there where I'll crash. And I'm like completely useless for 1 or 2 days. And I feel like I got absolutely nothing done and I really didn't get anything done. And I'm unfocused and I'm scattered and I'm just really all over the map and unproductive. So that happens, I think, a result of just running the way I do for a period of time, and then it's crash. So just, I got to go easy on myself on those days. And just, I think I've learned that on those days, just recognize what that is and then actually go with it and be like, okay, today is going to be a day off. I didn't plan for it to be a day off, but it's going to be a day off. And then that means don't even really try to be productive on that day. Just like take the day and, do whatever you got to do. Like if you need to lounge in pajamas and binge on Netflix and just do nothing, whatever, then that's what I need to do that day. Because while that's happening, it's like the recovery time that I need to go full force again. And it won't take that long either. So I think that's why I did have a couple of those days, at least one of those days in the last 2 weeks. And I was like, oh, and I feel so guilty on those days because I'm always like pedal to the metal. But now that I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna, halfway through the day, I was like, okay, I need to just realize this is what's happening and just, I give up on trying to work today. So then it ended up coming around. By the next day, I was totally ready to go again. So it goes to show, I don't think that as entrepreneurs even really rest enough. We always joke about how, like, unless there's a notification or calendar or our assistant tells us like that there's birthdays or holidays, like we would work right straight through it because we're so focused. And it's just like, what's that? What's a holiday? And I don't think that that's necessarily healthy. It's just the phase that we're in, right? To get to where we're trying to go. So
we're focused and we're determined. I think that's really, like you said, there's nothing wrong with taking holidays and vacations. And certainly you want to recognize birthdays and stuff like that, important things to your family. But when you get super focused, hyper focused on your goals and where you're going, and it's a big task, kind of the difference is between somebody who will get there and somebody who won't is the focus. And even with, some of our accomplishments, we don't really take too much time to recognize them because after a little while, they are really nothing in comparison to where we are heading. Like we've barely begun. We barely scratched the surface. And that might sound weird, but we're focused on something far beyond where we are today. So where we are today is fine, and we can take a moment to be grateful for it. But it's not like celebration, it's over, we made it. That hasn't happened yet. We haven't arrived.
Yeah. And also I find, on the note of like not taking the time to properly sit and celebrate, I think we do take a moment to recognize milestones. And I think milestones are really important, but I have a hard time celebrating yet because um we're not any it's I wouldn't be celebrating if I only made it up, at the beginning of Mount Everest. I mean, okay, I made it over the first hill. Woohoo. I look back and I'm like, great. But look at the mountain in front of me. So it's just like it's not, I feel like in a way, if I take too much time to look back at the little bunny hill I just went up, it's going to take away from the energy and focus I need to actually climb this mountain. So I'm not going to get too proud yet. I'm not going to get too, celebratory and cheering to the whole wide world. I'll recognize those moments because it is important. It's important to say, cool, I made the first mile, great, but I got 10,000 more to go. So awesome. One down, 9,999 to go. Great. But if you keep looking behind you, you're not looking in front of you. So that's just how I think anyways. Yep. And I'm not looking at Mount Everest as though it's an impossible mountain either. I think, oh no, it is possible. People have done it. People do it every year, climb this mountain. You need the right training. You need the right guidance. You need the right tools. You need the right systems. You need to be physically fit. You need to have trained for this thing, but it's doable. So that's how I look at it. I'm not looking at it as mountain impossible. It's possible, but it's going to be a lot of work. So, get busy working. So that's why we don't sometimes take maybe as much time as we'd like to eventually, taking time off, vacations, and like we don't really do that at this point because like there's not a moment to waste. Every moment that we're taking vacation, somebody else is taking over the marketplace, and it's just like we're on a mission right now. And we do take weekends off. But there's just, what's that?
For the most part.
Usually. I mean, we work 6 days a week. We really do. I mean,
as a business owner, your work never ends, right? There's always going to be something to do. So at the same time, you don't want to just be 24/7 all into your work because there's other things that are important, like your family and relationships and all that other stuff. So you do have to stop and pause, but as a business owner, especially somebody who's building a business from the ground up and it's just kind of getting off the ground, there's no time to linger. There's no time to wait,
Yeah. And I will say in our life, I mean, for some people that might be like, well, they never see their kids at that point, but we live a very different life because we homeschool our 5 kids. We're around each other all the time. So I see my kids 50,000 times a day, and we're interrupted 100,000 times a day, no exaggeration at all. But we're interrupted all day long. And most of the time we welcome those interruptions. I try to always welcome the interruptions and not make my kids feel like they are a pain in I try to be, that's the attitude I try to have. That's not always possible if you're in meetings, but they're actually really respectful for the most part. Like we'll say 90%, 95% of the time, usually, because it's such a part of our lifestyle, but we're with them all the time. So it's not like our kids never see us and we're just locked in our offices all day. We definitely involve them in all kinds of things. So we see them morning, noon, night, and everything in between. So we're with each other all the time. And we take moments. So I'll say, like, rather than taking big chunks of time off, we take moments whenever we want to or whenever we need to. So we might go for a walk in the middle of the day because we're just like, oh, we've been in meetings for 4 hours. Come on, everybody get in the car. We're all going for a walk. So we all go for a walk and take an hour and we'll go into nature so we do those kinds of things, right? And I feel like that is also meaningful because we're present in the moment. We're spending time together. We're instilling good habits and showing some balance there too. So I feel like we have more balance than maybe we give ourselves credit for, but it looks different for us.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks different. Exactly.
Yeah. So good check-in. Headlines and highlights is like anything significant you worked on this week where you felt like you made some progress, or maybe even not, but just like important things that you did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for myself, my main job, one of my main jobs recently is to get funding for our business because we're just at the point we're at. We're in hyper growth. We are under resourced, which means we don't have enough available cash on hand at any given moment to continue the hyper growth of the business. So we're under resourced. The velocity of the cash coming in and going out is rapid. So, it's really hard to keep up. Anyway, so that's one of my main jobs. And so I'm talking to some banks and other stuff that we're doing. Here's a challenge that we're facing with funding and that every new business will face. Pretty much every traditional lender, bank, grant, well, I don't know about all grants, but a lot of like the SBA loans, that kind of stuff. They all want you to have at least 2 years of tax records. Well, that's hard to do when you've only operated for a year. In our case now, not even 2 years. So we have 1 year of tax records, but we don't have 2. So in that case, a lot of banks will not even consider looking at you. They'll be like, okay, well, cool. Like what you've done. Oh, you've done 3 million. Oh, great. Come back to us when you have 2 years of tax records. Some of those things
everything's very by the books in their little systematic checks.
Yeah, exactly. So
got to tick all the boxes.
That's a challenge. What else? Actually, in terms of funding, came across something kind of cool. There's R&D tax credits that a business can apply for, even a new business.
In the United States.
In the United States, yes. And in Canada as well, but we're in the United States for this business. So there's things like that you can find out about that might apply to your business if that's relevant to where you're at. But that's kind of helpful. And then the other major thing that I've been working on is our production capacity project. This is because we manufacture our own products in-house. There's a lot of room for bottlenecks in our production line. So there's many different steps, many different people involved, different products along the line, depending on where you're at in the process. And so there's, that adds to complexity. But what we're working on is one of the things our advisors tasked us with is to create a flow chart that will really display each of the different departments essentially of the production line from beginning to end, and then kind of getting a little bit granular in each of those sections, breaking down what's the capacity. So what would be the maximum capacity if there was nothing in your way in that particular department, and what is your actual capacity right now, your average capacity. And then you do that for every department. And based on that, when you can see the visual, it really helps you see where the bottlenecks are, where the room for improvement is, where, which sections are holding up the other sections. Anyway, so we've been doing that and going over that with our team, and that's been super awesome. So now we're working on this next week, we will be working on implementing metrics, so goals for each of those departments to increase the average capacity that we are currently at. And so that's just, that's a simple thing. We're not really changing groundbreaking things at this point. It's just, okay, here's where we are. Well, let's improve. Eventually, we'll be adding things to the process, like different types of equipment that will help us increase the capacity, by 10, 20, 100x in some cases.
Yeah.
So we're not there yet, but that's where we will be. But right now, yeah, it's just been a good learning process, eye-opening, helpful, and it's actually been a good team building exercise as well. So that's what I do.
Yeah, huge project. But that will be a night and day difference for us in terms of figuring out what our absolute maximum capacity is. Because I mean, there's so many things you could talk about. Like that's such a general, to people listening, it's very vague, right? They won't know exactly what we're talking about when we say those things, but it's kind of like we were going to move our warehouse into a brand new warehouse, for example, right? So here's a practical example. We're like, oh, we ran out of space. We're using every last, square foot of this building. And then we did some exercises and we did some math. We did some exercises and looking at some of those bottlenecks. And what did we find out?
Well, we found that we were actually underutilizing our current facility by, what was it? Like ridiculous amount.
Like 400% when we changed some things.
At least 400%, something like that. Super underutilizing it anyways. That led us to rearranging the warehouse, which made...
just changing the layout. When you say rearranging, we're like changing like the direction we do things.
Right.
Like the line of like, I like imagine changing your living room around, rearranging your furniture. That's what we did in there. And just that alone increased our capacity, meaning how much we're able to produce and therefore sell in any given month it was like 400% or something, right?
Yep. 400%, 393%.
Oh, 393. Yep. That was one change. That was not even like, introducing any kind of automation, like everything's still hand done 100%. So, those are the kinds of things where it's like, when you think you've maxed out, you've only just begun. There's a saying, and I forget who came up with this, but it had to do with pushing your physical limits. It's like, when you think that like, and I maybe this came from like some kind of Navy SEAL training, something like this, but it was like, when you think you are absolutely like, when you think you're going to die, you're only about 30% of your full potential. So, and that I would say you could almost translate that to your systems and processes for how you do anything in your business. It's just like, you think you're making the most money you can, you're probably only making 20% of what you could possibly make with with your existing operation, with your existing inventory, with your existing everything. You haven't scratched the surface really. You haven't dug deep enough. And that's a huge lesson there. We haven't gone to lessons learned yet, but digging way deeper, getting way more mathematical about things and not winging it and eyeballing it and assuming and, like you can't do that stuff anymore. We have to be way more scientific and mathematical and data driven about every little decision we make, because it could mean millions of dollars. And it could mean like either way in the red or, profit. So these are hard lessons to learn. Money
lost by just pure ignorance or money left on the table for the same reason. Yeah, totally. So what have you been working on?
Like I said earlier, I've really been in the weeds of the business because I'm wearing multiple hats. I'm the only really producer of the business in terms of product development and photos, which obviously without those two things, we don't really have a business. So I was doing a lot of photo shoots in the last, since I recorded here. So we did a big photo shoot for our winter collection. I tried something different this time. So in the past, I've done photos and video content all at the same time. So let's say first of all, it takes me like a day or two or three, it just depends, to create the set that I want. And so I'm trying to prepare for that set. I'm ordering props and, trying to find things around my house. And I do like collecting props and things I envision for the set, sometimes months ahead of time as I'm thinking toward it, because, you need what you need on the day. And then I start creating my set. And I usually am doing this in our basement on like a kind of a large coffee table. It's like a really large coffee table. And then I've got some kind of like a background, and then I start assembling props and everything. And that, like I said, that process, if it's not really looking the way I want, that could take me several days to get it how I envision how I want it to look. Sometimes I nail it pretty fast. And then the key is that I've got to look through the camera lens and see what you're seeing. You can't look down on the table and go, oh yeah, that looks right. You got to look through the lens to see, what am I going to see, and it changes everything. So that took me a while to get that right. And then this time, what I was going to say is before I would shoot the product, I would take the photos I need of that product, that variant. Say it's just our deluxe candle. Okay, so I'm taking a photo of that deluxe candle. Then I take a photo with the lid, and then I take it with the box, and then I take it. There's like all these different just image variants that I need to get in order to properly market it. And then what I would do is flip the camera onto video and take video content. I would like do some slow-mo stuff and take it in portrait so you can use it on TikTok and reels and different things like that. This time I was like, I really want to be focused because it ends up being quite messy and your camera cards fill up and all of this. So this time I took all the photo content and then did video content on a different day. What that meant for me this time is that I had to disassemble and reassemble the set a couple of times, 2 or 3 times to get everything I needed. So I actually don't think that was more effective than the other way, the old way I was doing it. I think in the future, I'll do it the old way because it involved taking out a set, putting in a different set, and then having to put that set back. And this time I relocated the set to a different room because of lighting was bad. And this time of year is weird. It's really dark out and I wasn't getting the lighting I needed. Anyway, so many details. I don't know if this is interesting to anyone, but if it is, let me know because I could go on and on about the details of this stuff and challenges that I've had to figure out because I'm not even a photographer. Don't ask me what f-stop is, or I just press buttons until it looks the way I think it should look. And that's probably honestly the way I do most creative things. I'm a singer-songwriter, I'm a recording artist. I could say the same thing about my recording software. I know enough to record. I know enough to be dangerous, right? I know enough to get the job done, and that's it. I know the bare minimum. In fact, I know the bare minimum to get the job done. And I would say that with this photography stuff, I would say that with a lot of things in my life. I know enough to get the job done, knowing that one day it won't be me doing it anyways, but it's really, I'm like a master of minimum viable product, I think. That's what I don't know if that's a talent or a curse. I'm not sure, but being a master of minimum viable, hey, it's worked for me until now. Because I'm not going to be a specialist photographer. I'm never going to take a photography university course. I'm never going to do that. I press the buttons until it looks the way it should look to me. And then, and I might spend a day or two, like where I watch some tutorials and then I'll pick it up fast and then I apply it. So anyway, that's how I work. That's how I operate. And I kind of learn by doing. So anyways, those were the big things that I knocked off my list this week that were like imperative. I had to get it done because we have a launch coming up this next week, which, yeah, it's going to be potentially the biggest launch we've ever done. Fall was enormous. I mean, we had a record-breaking month when we launched in September. October was a normal month, and now November, or I'm getting my months, September, October. Now in November, we're going to launch our winter collection. It may be our biggest month yet. That's yet to be seen. We did a lot of lead generation leading up until now through September, October. We did a lot of lead gen. So we'll see how that translates. Everything's an experiment. So if it goes away, we're hoping. We will report back on how that goes. Also, make sure you're following me on social media, especially Instagram at Real Leah McHenry. There's all links in the descriptions as well, because I will report on this stuff a little more in real time, a little quicker, a little sooner. You'll see me talk about it. So I post on my stories a lot, turn on notifications, and you'll hear me talk about it. So I got a lot of that stuff done, but then in between, the perpetual photography, and I had these roll-on fragrances to do photos of. I had 6 different scents to do. I actually amazingly got that all done in one day and edited and uploaded. Like it was a big session. So I was happy with that. And then aside from that, I'm in a perpetual state of ideation, looking forward, looking into the upcoming collections, which I can't name because I can't name them here because they're secret, but looking forward to those launches. And then I would love to talk about one thing, which is, and I'll just push this into my lessons learned, but see, because we relaunch so many new things per year, there's some risk involved with that, meaning we have to put in a lot of capital to release a new collection, right? So there's all this artwork. First of all, we pay the artist to make the artwork. I work very closely with the artist and to create the vision I'm imagining, do the box design, the packaging, then like ordering all the supplies and materials, the scents, everything that we're doing. So it's very capital heavy on the front end to not really know how they're going to sell when you go to sell them. So it's great for past collections because we know we have some data on that, right? We can see, oh, these scents sell this many, blah, blah, blah. We have like math, we have data that we can know for the future how much to order. But with a new collection, we don't have that data. So it is a little bit right now we're going off, a wing and a prayer that Leah is in tune enough with the market and with the trends to know that this audience is going to love this. So I can say that I feel super confident in these things because I know the audience, I know the trends, and I'm studying them constantly on my finger on the pulse of this audience. But other than that, there's risk involved. And so we've been brainstorming about ways to mitigate risk. And we've been talking about that a bit with the advisors, call them the sharks. We talk with them about that, and we've come up with a couple of ideas. And today, the big idea that we're throwing around to mitigate risk, well, first of all, pre-orders work just fine in a company. You can do pre-orders, right? Pre-orders are great, but there's some capital cost involved in that, no matter what. Let's say you want to do a pre-order. Well, you got to have your minimum viable product at the very least, right? Either whether it's a mock-up, which mock-ups don't really sell, that's not going to help you very much. But let's say you have like the actual product, right? You still need the first article box printed or your packaging. You want to have it looking as good as you can. And, you've got a lot of effort to put into that. People will buy or not buy. And if it's a total dud and nobody bought it and it wasn't successful, you can always refund everybody and you will pivot at that point. We've been trying to get out of pre-order model for a long time because people, they expect Amazon, they want to order and they want to get it the same day if they can, right? So we've been trying to get out of pre-order model. That's good for the customer. It's very risky for a business like ours if we don't have historical data to show which products or which candles are going to sell the best. So we've been trying to rack our brains about how could we do both? How can we mitigate risk and do what we want for the customers to get their candles as soon as possible? So one idea we've come up with is some kind of focus group, some kind of a membership or a subscription where a limited group of our top customers or whoever signs up could be essentially, they would subscribe to this, but they would become part of our product development essentially. So let's say I'm developing next winter's collection and I want to know, and it's brand new collection. I have no data at all to know who's going to buy anything. And I want to know that I don't have any duds out of the 6 candles I'm going to do. I want to make sure there's no duds in the batch. Well, one thing that we were thinking we would do is, let's say, open this up, some high tier membership, say to 100 or 200 customers, and they have to sign something saying, shh, this is secret, I'm part of product development team, but they're paying for it. And we send them samples of this collection, say it's 6 or whatever, the whole thing. And then we get them to rate them and give us like extensive feedback. So it's like a paid focus group, essentially. So instead of us paying them, they're paying us to be part of this because it's super special, unique, exclusive, secret. I mean, you can't get any more like cool club than that. So, and the idea is that we would send this out, 6 to 12 months in advance to these people and get detailed feedback, because there's 2 things. Number one, if they like all of them, great. We will know how much to order for each thing, right? How many boxes and labels and materials and supplies. We're going to know exactly how much to order based on the popularity. If for some chance one of them gets negative feedback, then we're going to prevent a lot of loss, right? We're going to prevent the potential of having kind of a disaster candle, right? Where we've put in tens of thousands of dollars to produce something that nobody wants. So this is just one idea of, and it's a way, that you can really be creative to mitigate risk, create a cool, a product in and of itself, which would be this club, this high tier club of some kind. It's really a win-win-win-win-win. I can't see any downsides to it. And Steve, you can talk about, you were pricing it all out today about, you said to me today, you're like, this is a great idea, but let me put this in a spreadsheet and see what did you say to me?
Well, I wanted to see the viability of, it's a great idea, when we're talking ideas, but just because it's a good idea doesn't mean it will be a profitable idea or
Right.
an idea that won't bankrupt you. So you have to put the data together to show, and it has to be very conclusive data, as much as you possibly can anyways. So I put a spreadsheet together that has every single part that would be included. So everything from, the vessel that this thing will be in, to the packing paper that will be used in the shipper box to send it to a customer. Every item is on the spreadsheet and it's priced out. So it shows us how much it costs per unit, even including the labor to produce it, because at this point, we have that information. So, the labor costs, the cost for the warehouse is included, the utilities for the warehouse for that time period that it'll take to produce it is included. Everything is included.
Yeah.
So it gives us a really good idea of what will this thing actually cost us, so that we can price out, because you don't want to just pull a number out of the thin air and say, we're going to charge X amount to a customer. But
I feel like that's how most people price their products.
it is. But A, that might not be profitable. And B, that price might be unfair. It might be just totally out of left field, completely whacked for what that true value is to the marketplace. So you have to kind of balance them both.
Yeah. So what did you find out? Because I looked at the spreadsheet once. We don't have to talk specific numbers, but did it turn out to be profitable based on what we were wanting to do with this?
Yeah, it will be.
Yeah. And when we were chatting earlier today, my thought process was, well, we don't have to be super profitable on them, because really, remember, the objective of this was not to create a program, like some focus group program for the sake of it. It was to mitigate risk, right? So the primary objective is mitigate risk, make sure that we're not putting out a theme or an entire collection, investing tens of thousands of dollars into a collection that nobody wants, or that you end up with a dud product that nobody wants. So, and the secondary reason is so we can understand which will be the most popular ones. So we'll order more of those products. We'll order more supplies to produce more of those top favorites, right? So we usually, out of a collection of 6, you get 2 that are just gangbusters and they go nuts. So we order more of that, but we won't know until we sell it normally. So that's my goal with this focus group. Now, if we're profitable, great. But again, initially, it's only going to be open, I'm thinking maybe in 100, 200 people max, because that's a lot of data to, you can really extrapolate that. I wouldn't do less than 100.
Somebody has to go through that data too.
Yes. Yeah.
So
our whole team will.
1,000 people, with these surveys are going to be pretty in depth. So, oh my goodness, that would be a full-time job for an entire person for a year if you had too much data, right? So you don't want to do that. Now, this is where we are at though, right? Like our packaging, each candle, we're talking like specific packaging per candle. Most people aren't there yet. We're just entering this phase, right? Almost 2 years in. So for most people, take what we say with a grain of salt, and it's probably a lot more simple for you. So, take the principle at least and apply it to what you're doing. But most people we're doing custom packaging. We design them, we get them printed. They're specific now for each candle. That's pretty intense. So we have to have the data at this point. Otherwise, it literally is, it could be for one launch, could be and it has been in the past when we've miscalculated things, tens of thousands of dollars now sitting in a warehouse that
Right.
we will sell eventually, but for that season, that is actually a loss on
Right.
your revenue, right?
And when you're a startup, that greatly impacts your cash flow, and cash flow being, can you pay people the next week when payroll comes up? That's important. So if that, if you have 50 grand sitting that you will sell, well, we'll sell it, later in the year. Well, that's great. But, this month, can we pay people? So it's important that we get our numbers right at really, really tight at this point so that we're not running into those issues.
Right. Because one way or another, you're paying for that material anyways. Like, yes, you have to pay payroll if you have people on your team, but regardless, the manufacturer, the supplier, whatever, expects to be paid whether you sold it or not. So you have to, keep those things in mind. Be careful.
Yeah.
Trust the data.
Trust the data. So I feel like we're definitely in this lessons learned section now. Lessons learned. A couple of we've said a lot already, but I would add to this that for people, like, we're talking a lot about data and systems and processes and a lot of that sort of thing. And I feel like that can scare away creative people like me, where they're just like, oh, that would just suck like all the joy out of my entrepreneurialism or out of the creating the business. And I'm coming to really learn and believe that, data and creativity are not at odds. Data and creativity can really live happily ever after. That, it's like the two people in a marriage, right? You got to have, they're opposite, but they're needed together. If you only have data and you only have spreadsheets and you only have information, there's not really a business, right? The creativity is that rocket fuel. It's the idea. It's the spark. It's that finger on the pulse of the market. It's all those things you need, but the data is where you make decisions, right? So there's creative decisions and there's financial decisions. They actually work in tandem together, and it's not either or, it's both and. And the more we embrace that, the more successful this venture is going to be. And so just knowing where your weaknesses are, like, some people are really data driven and they make an amazing partner, right? For somebody who's really creative, and they need to learn how to work together well to make that successful. So, but I also want to say that data is the tiebreaker. So if it's a matter of Leah saying, but I really, 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 really want to do this idea, if at the end of the day, we put stuff and we tally it all up and we're looking at the data, at the end of the day, that is the tiebreaker. That's the decision maker, not, but I just have to do it. So that's really important thing to know.
Yeah, it is. Definitely. And I'm more logistical. Like I'm more in the logistics than you are. You're in the that kind of stuff, the product. And even I have resisted really digging into the data up until somewhat recently, I would say. Now it's actually getting kind of fun. But when you don't know what to look for and you don't know what you don't know, it's really difficult to know what you should be looking for or tracking. So I would just say to anybody who's starting out, just start tracking everything that you possibly can and try to do it in an orderly manner. So, don't have one document over here in this place and one document in this other platform. Try to keep your information as tidy and as close as possible, because one day when you understand it a little bit more, you'll actually have the data available that you need and you'll be able to make sense of it.
Okay. So when you said try to track everything and keep it, your information neat, like, what should people be tracking? Like, you can talk generally and then we can go more specific, but what should people be tracking? And that's like absolutely vital.
Well, I would say everything from how many customers you have to how many returns per month you have, like those kinds of things, returns or exchanges, that kind of stuff, because that tells you information potentially about a product being either, not great, defective, people maybe having misunderstandings or misinterpretations about what they're expecting. So expectations.
So I just call that being really in tune with your first customers and really becoming obsessed with the customer and learning what is important to them. What do they like? What do they not like? Why would they buy your product over the other product? Why did they buy your product? How does it compare to other products? I could rattle off a list of maybe 100 questions you would want to ask when trying to learn your customer and becoming obsessed with who they are and what matters to them, because then that gets to the bottom issue of why would they return something? Why would, it gets to the bottom issue of a lot of that stuff, that things that aren't like full-blown logistical or like normal things like, oh, it arrived broken because UPS was kicking it around the warehouse like they do. Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
we pack our stuff very well.
and it still happens. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it happens. So yeah, things happen. But
so aside from customer being really in tune with customers, what do people need to be tracking like data wise?
You need to be tracking your profit and your loss. So how much, and that comes down to like, what is your revenue for the month? What are all your costs that were incurred during that month? What upcoming costs do you have that maybe you didn't pay for yet, but that you're using in that month, right? That they're accounts payable.
Really tracking the finances, your cost of goods sold, all, like you said, like including the labor, including your salary, including all of those things, tracking your, if you're manufacturing your own products out of your garage, understanding the maximum capacity you have. If you maximize every last thing, every square, every cubic square, right? So not just square foot, but like vertical space and all like maximizing how much could you actually produce out of your garage? Probably 10 times more than you think.
Tracking your cash in the bank. So what gets deposited into the bank every day or whatever the time period is for whatever the deposits that you're receiving. When they come in the bank, track them. And then also be tracking what goes out of the bank. What are you paying? Because that's your cash flow. So a P&L is great, but most people I don't think are even at the point where they're pulling P&Ls. If they are, that's fine too. But this little exercise in cash flow, what's going into your bank on a daily basis and what's going out of the bank on a daily basis. Your cash that's going out should not exceed the cash that's coming in. If it does, you're going to run into a problem. And one of the things that we're learning and really working towards is having at least 6 months of what we need to operate our business per month. So 6 months of those expenses in the bank at all times, sitting there. That's not to be spent, but it's there in case we need it. It's like an emergency fund. So that's how much you need to be sitting in your bank at all times. So if at the end of the month you have $100 left, how long is it going to take you to build up 3 months of expenses with that little bit that's left, right? You're going to have to start cutting costs somewhere. So that just,
or increasing prices. That's the other thing. I mean, most people don't charge enough for, that's almost always the case. Yeah. They're trying to compete
for, products like ours or handmade products or artisan type crafts or products and whatever they are. They're usually higher quality. People will pay more. So yeah, definitely price increases. That's definitely something that we've learned as well.
Yeah. So a lot of good lessons learned. I like that you have also, I don't know, I think you wrote this down, measuring everything and assuming nothing. So, the saying that we talk about a lot is what you measure can be managed. What is measured can be managed. If you're not measuring it, you're not managing it. Guaranteed you're not. And so, and how you do one thing is how you do everything. So we're seeing that so much in every detail of our business. So you've got to measure. Like I said, this is why I just feel like there's we're in the throes of learning why so many startups fails, because there's so many opportunities to fail, and there's so much involved with like the personal growth side of it, and like being willing to learn this stuff. I feel like that's almost the big determining factor, is like, are we willing to learn whatever it takes to succeed, and also be willing to not try and reinvent the wheel and have too much pride, and say, oh, we'll do it ourselves. Like getting outside help, getting, get a mentor, get coaching, get what you need to learn. People can shorten the learning curve for you by years or by millions of dollars. In our case, we could make some catastrophic mistakes that would impact a lot of lives. We have a staff that we support and their families. We have babies being born by our staff members. There's a lot on the line, and we take that really seriously. And so it's important that we do not take the harder road and try to do everything ourselves. It's really important to always, the best people in the world, they all have mentors, they all have coaches. The Olympic athletes, they have coaches, and that's why they win. So make sure that you get a mentor from someone who's doing it, who has done what it is that you want to do, because they know more than you do. They have the track record, you don't. In this case, our advisors have the track record, we don't. So that's why we're listening to them. It's important.
Yeah, definitely. Good stuff.
All right. Well, that wraps up this week. Any last thing you want to say to people who are watching?
I don't know. I was just thinking maybe that some of the stuff that we're talking about in this particular video, maybe the other ones too, I don't know, but I was just thinking about myself, and like, even 2 years ago, even a year ago, really, I would maybe just kind of shrug off some of the things that we've said, because they're pretty simple, but they're also kind of like, well, what does tracking mean? Tracking the data. Okay, you guys are talking about data a lot. That just sounds like business talk, but it's not that hard. It may seem ominous because you've never done it, but really, it's really just simple. Just start documenting everything, and eventually you'll have a story that you wouldn't have had if you hadn't done that. And it's really important. And that's one of the things that we're really learning, or that I am anyways, is that tracking the data, tracking everything, assuming nothing is how you win. So don't take that as like whatever. Start doing it now.
Yeah, we wish we had been way more meticulous from the very beginning than we were. It would have impacted things in an incredible way had we been doing that on the level that we are now. And look, we've barely scratched the surface on what we will be doing too. So yeah, we've been there. And all the good thing is every single thing is learnable and figure outable, and there are systems for it. And yeah, so that's the good news. We don't have all the answers, but we're just sharing the journey as we go, because even a year ago, there's so much I've said here now that I didn't know a year ago. So we're on a very steep learning curve ourselves, and just know that that's completely normal. It will be overwhelming. That's how you know you're doing it right. And there you go.
Okay.
So,
see you next time.
Yeah. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed, because we don't have to do this. We're sharing this information. Hopefully it helps people. And please send this to somebody who would benefit, a startup, artisan startup, or entrepreneur. We're in the physical e-commerce manufacturing business, and so we're selling physical products we make ourselves. We're in the candle business, but there might be people making other things, and so hopefully they can learn from our journey and be an inspiration if we can. So, all right, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.